Hey, and welcome to the Hero's Journey podcast, Series 2, Episode 2. Today I want to talk about archetypes and what are they. In the last episode, we looked at a dream I had, and I used a bunch of different sources and analyses to interpret the dream and what it may have meant, at least to me as the dreamer. And one element that recurred throughout the episode and will no doubt continue to occur throughout most episodes of the podcast is this idea of the archetype. Now, I didn't explicitly draw attention to the idea and point out this is an archetype, but I did use a number of archetypal characters to explain and understand various parts of the dream and my own psyche. For instance, the mentor, the person that I was following while I was swimming, the kind of like the mother or the guide in the woman's voice that was speaking to me, the nymph or the siren that was in the woman, all these different kind of archetypal characters that appeared, and of course myself, the hero on the hero's journey, descending into the unknown on a journey of discovery, blah blah blah. This hero is a common archetype. And there are a number of common archetypes that we'll get into in a minute. But like I said in the very first podcast, we're all heroes on our own journey in our own story. But one thing that's important to note, sorry, just had a bit of gas there, sorry. One thing that's important to note is that we are not just one archetype. There isn't just one archetype that fits us and that's it, we're done. There are a total of 12 archetypes, at least 12 main archetypes. They could potentially go on at infinity. Like the hero archetype is just not the hero archetype and that's it. The hero archetype kind of diverges into loads of different types of hero. Essentially, the more heroes that emerge, let's say if as many hero films as are made, there are heroes. Does that make sense? Take the Avengers, for instance. In the Avengers, you've got Spider-Man, and he's got his own powers and his own journey and that. But then you've also got Iron Man, who's a philanthropist and a millionaire and an inventor. He's so different to Spider-Man, who's just a boy bitten by a radioactive spider. Their powers come from different sources. They've got different agendas, but they're still both heroes in their own way. So there are so many divergent variants of what these heroes could or couldn't be. So it's important for us to not get bogged down and trapped in one particular archetype and assigning that one particular archetype to our lives and living out our entire lives through this one archetype. So this concept of archetypes was, I'm not going to say invented because it's an ancient concept, but I'm going to say developed by somebody I talked about in the last episode as well, Carl Jung. Some people call him Carl Jung, but same thing, I guess. Now he developed this concept of the archetypes, kind of labeled them and laid them out and just made them more accessible for us to understand and identify. But again, like I said, they're ancient concepts that just embody the characteristics of various people or behaviors that we see in life, and they all have their own characteristics, strengths and weaknesses. So I'm gonna go through each one just and explain a little bit about what the characteristics, strengths and weaknesses are. And I'm looking at a website called connorneil.com, CONORNEILL.com, and normally I would go for a more scientific or clinical or like an academic website just for credibility's sake. However, the more academic sites are very text heavy. There's a lot of academic language which I don't find accessible. You may prefer that and find it more accessible. I don't. This particular website is more of like a kind of self-help, business building, understanding kind of website, and it's clear and concise and easy to access, hence why I'm using it. So there is a post called Understanding Personality, the 12 Jungian Archetypes. So let's do. I'll start at the top. The term archetype means original pattern in ancient Greek. So we're talking about the original mold, the original version of this particular type of thing. Yeah, and it embodies all the characteristics of what an original XYZ would embody. Yes. Jung used the concept of archetype in his theory of the human psyche. He identified 12 universal mythic characters, archetypes, that reside within our collective unconscious. Now, the collective unconscious is something I'm going to touch on a little bit, but I think it really warrants its own podcast. So I'm not going to go into it too much because it's a huge, expansive topic. So Jung defined 12 primary types that represent the range of basic human motivations. So the things that drive us, the things that make us do the things that we do and the way that we are. Now, these archetypes don't necessarily make us do it. They don't make us do anything, but he's kind of categorized and quantified them, you know? So it's like, oh, you know, you're doing, it's like genres a little bit, if you like. If you make a piece of music and the tempo is 140, people might start to say, oh, it's grime. Oh, you're doing grime. Does that make sense? Because the 140 BPM beats per minute tempo is maybe dance as well, but in London, in the UK, it's more associated with grime. Anyway, so maybe that was a bit of a loose example. Anyway, so let's move on from it. So each of us tends to have one dominant archetype that dominates our personality, according to Colonial. But like I said before, you may feel an affinity with one particular type of archetype. However, it's important for you to remember and understand that that is not you. One archetype cannot define you. There are many facets to you, and elements of all of these archetypes are within you. So let's see what else he's got there. What do each of the 12 archetypes seek? I'm not going to go to that yet because you don't know what the 12 archetypes are. The 4 cardinal orientations. Let's just skip that bit. So when you come to the connorneal.com website, if you do, you're going to see a couple of things before you get to the point where I'm going to read from now. So you can take your time and explore them in more detail, but I want to try and keep the podcast to the point if I can, because I have a tendency to go off on tangents. So the more I kind of restrict that, the better for you guys. So here are the 12 archetypes. The innocent, sometimes also referred to as the child. It depends on what website you're on. In my reading and my research in the past, I've seen it referred to as the child, but here it's called the innocent. And the goal is to be happy. So, you know, children, they always want to play. They always want to have fun. They always want to be happy. You know, they're always laughing and joking and stuff. So that's the main goal of the innocent, that innocent character. When people say you're childlike, it normally means you're quite upbeat, chatty, happy, you know, all that sort of stuff. The weaknesses of the innocent or the child, it says boring. I don't know if children are boring. I find them quite fascinating and fun, but I will agree that they are naive in their innocence. Some people are just naive, man. They're just their character. They're a sucker for everything, you know. You have people that are like in there. I mean, I don't know if this is because the advances of technology or whether they're just naive in their characteristics. But you have old people that get duped into sending money to some fake Arab prince in Uganda, I don't know, wherever. That's a stereotypical, that's an archetype, isn't it? That's like a modern archetype, you know. Good afternoon, madam. Ay, ay, ay. But you know, these things happen. These people, whether they're innocent or just naive, I don't know, but maybe their dominant characteristic is one of the child. That's just like, I'm just trying to put it in context for you guys, because obviously we're coming from nowhere, especially if you haven't heard of this concept before. Then you've got the everyman. This is the person that seeks to connect with others and wants to be equal with everybody and doesn't want to be left out, doesn't want to stand out from the crowd. They want to fit in. Now their weakness is losing their identity, their own self, in order to blend in with the crowd, you know. And it says here, for the sake of superficial relationships. And you know what, a lot of the time the people that we're trying to fit in with and be with and whatnot, they're not even really our friends, are they? Their strength or their talent though is realism, empathy, and a lack of pretense. I think that's a bit contradictory. How can you be sacrificing your own self and your own identity in order to blend in? That seems like the ultimate pretense to me. Anyway, I'm not here to tell you that these are infallible, but there is a lot of application and relevance to our lives within these. I've seen some great critiques of these and Jung's ideas also, and encourage you to seek that out in your own time. But I just want to introduce you to this idea. So next you have the hero. The hero is one that we've been talking about a lot on the Hero's Journey podcast. It's a bit of a feature here. So you should know quite a bit about it. But the core desire of the hero is to prove one's worth through courageous acts, and their goal is to become an expert and a master in the way that improves the world. Their weaknesses are arrogance and always needing another battle to fight. You find that the hero has a very big ego, always thinks they're right, blah blah blah. I know you're thinking that about me right now. Sorry, I spend a fair bit of time in the, you know, with getting to know the hero archetype, and you know, they find they always need a battle. You ever come across somebody who, like, I don't know, slays the dragon, gets the girl, gets the prize or whatever, I don't know what it is, and they're bored. Then they're bored. Like, the chase is over, it's done. They just can't sit still. They need another battle to fight. They need another place to go. You know, some people, they just can't stay still. They can't settle. They need some other mission, some other thing to be doing. That's one of the weaknesses of the hero. Not content with winning the battle. They're always seeking another fight. But their strengths are their competence and their courage. The hero is also known as the warrior, crusader, rescuer, superhero, soldier, dragon slayer, or the winner. It says team player there. I'm not 100% sure that the hero is always a team player. Maybe after a while. Then you've got the caregiver. That's like the mother, the nurturer, if you like. Also known as the parent, helper, or saint. Their core desire is to protect and care for others, and their goal is to help others. Their strengths are compassion and generosity, but their weaknesses are martyrdom and being exploited. Martyrdom, if you don't know what that is, martyrdom is like sacrificing yourself for somebody else, or sacrificing yourself for the greater good. You know, you become a martyr for the cause, you know, dying for the cause, if you like. I notice a lot in a lot of people who demonstrate the qualities of the caregiver. They do get exploited. I see it a lot with young people that are not as confident as some of the others, and they do things like they bring in sweets and share them out, and they borrow out their things, and they think it's good because people start to like them, like, oh, this guy's cool, she's cool, she borrows me this, he gives me that, da, da, da. But the next thing you know, their phone's missing because they borrowed it to someone, their charger's missing, their sweets are gone, their oyster's gone. It's like, yo, where's your stuff? Oh, I borrowed it to da, 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 da. They went home. It's like, oh man, like, when are you gonna stop giving? When are you going to stop borrowing, in order to win friends? You're being exploited. But that's just, what the life that the path that they're on at the moment. Next, you've got the explorer. Core desire is the freedom to find out who they are through exploring the world. Their goal is to experience a better, more authentic, more fulfilling life. You find these types of people are always traveling, they're always exploring new ideas, expanding their mind, their knowledge and understanding, and they're always quite down to earth people. Their weaknesses, they can be aimless and always wandering. They never really have a foundation. They never really have a home. They're always having to. If you find that they, like, a lot of the time they're in a shared house, or they're always backpacking, always not on holiday, but always just away for lengths at a time. Never really settled, and as a result become a bit of a misfit, bit of an outcast, bit of a nomad, if you like. I guess it's a weakness. Is it a weakness? Being aimless is a weakness because it implies that you don't really have a direction or really know where you're going, hence why you're wandering, trying to find yourself, trying to find a place. But I find that the best way to find yourself and find a place is to stay in one place. Every time you get up and you move and you go around, you're starting from scratch again. You're taking up, and like a hermit crab, it carries its house and its shell on its back, which is great because it can have a house and a home anywhere it is, but it has to keep on changing it, and it has to keep on finding a new one. And instead of it building and growing in a space and expanding there and building on what it has to continually look for a new place to grow as it grows. And in some ways that's good, in some ways it's always starting from scratch. It depends. Different strokes for different folks. Their strengths are they're autonomous, they're ambitious, and they are true to their selves. They're true to their soul. The next one you have is the rebel. Core desire is revenge or revolution. I think revenge and revolution are quite different things, but their goal is to overturn what isn't working. That's very interesting, and that's very much in line with revolution as opposed to revenge. Revenge is, in my opinion, more getting back for what was done to, whereas revolution is inciting change. Their weaknesses are crossing over to the dark side and crime. I see it a lot, especially young people. They say teenagers are very rebellious. I think it's true. And rebelling against everything: people, parents, rules, school, blah blah blah. And I find that a lot of what happens is they get a bit of rebellion in them, and people start to label them as bad, or they're just that one's a bit bad, that one's a bit this, that one's a bit that, and then they've got a bit of a reputation to live up to, and maybe they're fitting in with an even worse crowd than they really are. And then maybe they give them a knife, or maybe they give them drugs to carry, and maybe they get kicked out of more schools and all these little things, and then they just end up on a downward spiral into just a life of crime. It's very easy for young people to go that way, and especially right now, it's glamorized. If you're selling drugs and you're doing drillings, whatever you're doing. Like there's glamour to that. You can do it and rap about it and win a MOBO. Like that's a real quick shortcut to success and fame and all the things that you may desire through a real negative chain of events. That is something different. Don't get me started on that. Their strengths, however, are outrageousness and radical freedom. They're normally willing to buck trends, go against the grain, call out falsities where they see it, be radical with ideas, try new things. These are great qualities to have also. The rebel's not all bad. All of these archetypes have their positive and negative traits. There is value in all of them and everything that they represent. So we can't write any of them off and say, oh, that one's no good, this one's better. They all have their purpose. Next we have the lover. The core desires intimacy and experience. The goal to be in a relationship with people, work and surroundings they love. So they want to be connected and intimate with everything. You find people that, oh, I love this, I love that. They're very huggy, they're very, they're very expressive of love, and they bring a warmth to most environments. They're also known as the partner, the intimate enthusiast, sensualist, spouse, team builder. You find that they're very normally the one that wants to work things out or talk things over. A very emotional. Their weaknesses are outward directed desire to please others at risk of losing their own identity. You find people who wear their hearts on their sleeves, always giving the heart away, giving their love away, often unrequited. Love is often unrequited or not reciprocated. You find also people, they fall in love with people and give everything they have to the other person in terms of emotion, energy, mental energy, everything they have, and they become so wrapped up in that person that they just live in the other person's life. Whatever the person says, they do. Wherever the person goes, they go. And their hobby, they forget about their hobbies, and it's like, oh well, my girlfriend is into, I don't know, fashion and baking, so that's what I love now. They lose their own identity. Their talents though are passion. They're passionate people. They're grateful and show a lot of appreciation and are committed. Next, you've got the creator, an artist whose core desire is to create things of enduring value. Their goal is to realize a vision. These people this archetype kind of manifests itself in people as like a passion to create things. It could be art, it could be buildings, it could be anything, but to manifest ideas in the real world. These people normally have great vision. They can see things that are coming up, they can plan things, they can predict things, and are great at executing plans. The weaknesses are they're perfectionists. They're often not satisfied with what other people do as well as what they do, and sometimes it can be a hindrance. They don't do anything because they want it to be perfect, so they don't do anything, and often they are bad at coming up with solutions. A lot of ideas, a lot of we could try this, we could do that, a lot of options, a lot of variants, but not actually a solid solution that could work. Sometimes just having one simple solution to a thing is better than having 10 possible solutions that may or may not be as effective or even work. Their talent, of course, is creativity and imagination. Next, we have the jester. Core desire is to live in the moment with full enjoyment, and their goals are to have a great time and lighten up the world. You meet people that are just always busting joke, always got a sarcastic word, a joke to make, and just just bringing a funny vibe to things, man. Their weaknesses are frivolity, which is being frivolous, It's like wasting resources or money and wasting time. You find that people who are, if you think back to school, there was always someone busting a joke, turning around, distracting other people, drawing something, throwing something at someone. These are the jesters. Their talent is joy, bringing joy. They're always happy. You know, one of the negatives about the jester, I think, is that they have the tendency to turn negative situation or laugh off negative situations. If they're being bullied or someone is taking advantage or whatever, they make it into a joke or make light of serious issues. That can be a problem if you get stuck in the character of a jester, because people will just start to think, he's a clown, he don't take nothing serious, and that's not somewhere you want to be. Number 10, the sage. Core desire is to find the truth. Goal, to use intelligence and analysis to understand the world. A good example of the sage archetype is someone like Gandalf the Grey or White in the Lord of the Rings, or the one from Harry Potter. I forget what his name is. Not Hagrid. Hagrid's the one with the big one. Dumbledore, that's his name. So Gandalf and Dumbledore, they're like archetypal sages, wizards, scholars, philosophers, academics. They embody that. Their weaknesses are they can study details forever and never act. Their talent is wisdom and intelligence. You got the magician, bit like Dumbledore and Gandalf actually. Core desire to understand the fundamental laws of the universe. Goal, to make dreams come true. Weaknesses, being manipulative, and the talent, finding win-win solutions. The last one is the ruler. Could be the king, queen, the boss, manager, the politician. Core desire, control. Goal, create a prosperous, successful family or community. So there's swings and roundabouts there. They want to control everything, but they also want to see it all be successful. That's the kind of dilemma that you have with having a government. They want control over everything, but they also want their country, their state to be successful, but maybe at the expense of the people that live within it. Anyway, moving away from the political ideas, the weaknesses are being authoritarian and unable to delegate. Rulers that can't delegate, leaders that can't delegate are the worst kind of leaders. Ironically, their talent or their strength is responsibility and leadership. An inability to delegate, in my opinion, is an inability to lead. But who am I to criticize? So what does knowing the archetypes do for us? Well, being able to understand the archetypes is important for us as individuals, as it can help us identify parts of ourselves that we may not fully understand, and identify behaviors, actions, characteristics of ourselves that we may not fully be aware of. And it can also help us understand where we're at on our own journeys, and being able to identify those archetypal traits can help us find direction for where we're going on those journeys, and maybe even provide a bit of insight into how we have dealt with certain situations. For instance, I mentioned the jester. If you spent a lot of your time just laughing off things that have gone wrong, or things that have not quite worked out, and just kind of covering them over with jokes and stuff, or you're still somebody who does that, you may be experiencing what's known as archetype possession, where one archetype has come to the surface, and the traits of that archetype are just dominating you and your character. Now that you know that that's possible, and that there are other archetypes and characteristics within you. You're not, that one is not you. Now that you know there are others, it could be a good time for you to start exploring what other traits and characteristics you actually want to identify with and draw out from yourselves. Like I spoke about in the last podcast, I was jumping off of that cliff down into the unknown to bring my conscious mind, my conscious self, to meet with my unconscious self. That means meeting with parts of myself that I haven't fully connected with yet, and I don't fully understand, and I don't fully know how to embrace and use. I may just be living life as the jester, diving down in and then finding out there's a ruler, a creator, an innocent, a child, and explore all of those things that I've not experienced yet, not embraced. It also tells us a bit about other people. We're gonna see other people in the world now, especially now, and you probably noticed it before, but now you're going to be able to make the connection. Oh, you know what, that person, they're a caregiver, they're always giving stuff to other people. That is what they're the kind of archetype that they're operating in. May not always be it, because we've all got other things, but that is their dominant one, you know. And you're going to start to see people and be like, that's the jester, that's the lover, that's the hero. You know, you're going to start to see all these different roles coming out of the people around you, and it's going to give you a good level of insight to where that person is on their journey. It's also going to help you help them, because when you know more about where somebody's at, you can provide better care or better service or better empathy, you know, for whatever it is they're going through or whatever it is they need. And you know that thirdly, I think this is one of the most important things. You're going to be able to understand what's known as the collective unconscious. I think I mentioned it earlier, but said I would do another podcast on it, but I'm going to touch on it a tiny bit. And the collective unconsciousness is basically like the accumulative understanding that everybody has. It's like an innate understanding that everybody just has. A really good example of collective unconsciousness in a modern context is like memes. Somebody creates a meme over in, I don't know, Timbuktu somewhere, and you see it on Insta, and straight away you look at it and you laugh, and all it is a line of text and an image. That feeling when, and then there's just a picture. Like classic memes that came up were like, boy, I don't know nothing about that, and then Kermit sipping on a tea. It's just like, it's Kermit sipping on a tea, but it's the face that he's making, and it's a face that you make, and it's a face that if you see somebody make that face and they're sipping on a tea, you know that the person's like, I ain't saying nothing about that. You know what I mean? It's just collective unconsciousness. Nobody's ever come to you and told you, you make this face when you think or feel like this. It's just something we do. Everyone around the world, no matter what language you speak, we do it. We know it unconsciously, you know, and we can relate to and identify with it. When you start to understand the archetypes, you're going to start to understand more of the collective unconscious. And like I said before, these are ancient ideas. Jung didn't invent them. They're just things that are innate in human beings that we just kind of know, we just understand, and nobody's ever taught us them. And we've not met John in Timbuktu who invented the Kermit sipping tea meme, but we know exactly what he's talking about, and we know exactly the face that he's pulling all the way over there, even though we've never seen his face and never will. But on a deeper level as well, when you start to understand the collective unconsciousness and the archetypes and the traits of them and how they all kind of fit together and kind of build our perception of reality and the way the world is built and so on and so forth, you get to tap into like knowledge. It's going to sound a bit mystical, but like ancient knowledge of our ancestors and tribes and cultures and people before us, like all of these people before us, before memes, before anything. Actually, I heard memes were around in ancient times anyway, just in a different format. But you start to understand how, these people, what they were thinking weren't so far out, and the symbols that they were seeing, like they said this was in the stars, like Orion and stuff, and I don't know, the seasons, this and the sun gods and Christ figures and all these sorts of things. You start to see them manifesting in modern times, in real life, through these archetypes. Like, there's so many arguments that I just mentioned Christ, like, oh well, Jesus Christ isn't really Jesus Christ, maybe he was Osiris, because the stories are the same. Or if you go back to Egyptian times, there was like a Christ and a baby and a Mary figure and all these things. These are archetypes, that's all. They're just archetypes, figures that reoccur throughout time. A savior, like if you've ever played The Legend of Zelda, you will see that Link, the main character, he is a type of Christ. He is the hero of time, and throughout time, throughout every era, epoch, whatever you want to call it, there is a reincarnation of this character. He's not always Link. He's just this hero of time, and he's just the embodiment of this hero sent to defeat this particular thing and restore peace and light and all that sort of stuff. Just reborn. It's the same guy being reborn over and over again. Whoever was Christ in Mayan times, that spirit is still the same spirit that was in Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago. It's the same embodiment. Anyway, I'm not even trying to get into a religious debate or debunk anyone's religion or faith or anything like that. I'm just giving you an example of where you will start to see archetypes, ancient knowledge manifested in modern times. The same symbols are still active and still relevant right now. As a result, your perception of the world will begin to shift, and you'll start to see things in a different way. When you start seeing those symbols and stuff and noticing archetypes here and relating to this to that, you'll notice everything is kind of connected. Everything's related somehow. And you're going to start to, I enjoy the experience of seeing a cartoon and being like, yo, that's a Christ, yo, that's the hero, that's, you start to see making all these connections. It's amazing. Another thing you're going to see, and I may do another episode on this actually, is cycles. And it's going to start to realize that cycles are everywhere, and cycles kind of rule everything, man. Like, we're talking about the hero's journey. Well, the hero's journey is a cycle. It doesn't just end, it's continuous, it's infinite. There's going to be so many times where you have to come to the top, go descend down, have these battles, rise up, help people, self-actualize, then descend down. It's a journey, man. It doesn't end until it ends. But you're going to start seeing cycles in everything. Let's start with the seasons. There you go. The seasons are deep. If you study the seasons, man, you'll see that the seasons of the planet and the earth are so intertwined with our life cycle. It's crazy. Anyway, I'm going to talk more about the collective unconscious in another episode. So for now, I want you to just focus on understanding the 12 archetypes, getting to know them, their characteristics, and as you begin to learn what they are and how they're represented, like I said, you're going to see them more in your life, and where you're exhibiting traits of those archetypes and where people around you are exhibiting those traits as well. And you're going to start to better understand the roles of those people in your life and your role in their life and your own purpose in life. Like I said, you're going to start to notice symbols, symbolic characters, and almost everything you see, you're going to be able to associate with some archetypal role or attribute. You know, here's a little practical exercise for you, just to show you how deep into our psyche it goes. You know that major brands use the concept of archetypes to design their logos, decide how they're going to market themselves to you, and decide where they want to position themselves in the market and what type of brand they want to be. Have you ever heard of the term hero brand? Oh, that's a hero brand. These are hero brands. Or where do you think that term comes from? From the hero archetype, of course. These brands take on the qualities of the hero archetype and they market themselves to you as a hero. And what that does, it makes you believe, or leads you to believe, that brand is some sort of hero in your life that's going to bring discipline, focus, strength, abilities. Brands like Nike, for instance. Nike is a hero brand. It's one of the biggest hero brands. Look at their symbolism. It's a swoosh, or the Nike tick. That Nike tick, the term Nike, the word Nike, comes from the Greek goddess Nike, which is the Greek goddess for victory. Don't quote me on the actual goddess's name, but it is, or even if it's a Greek goddess. It's just a bit of off the cuff research for you. Forgive me, I didn't plan on talking about that. But look into Nike, goddess of victory. So when you wear the brand, you are putting on victory. You're saying, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna be victorious, and you're taking on the characteristics of that archetype. Even if you don't know it, it's all on an unconscious level. So maybe go on the internet and look up brand archetypes and hero brands. Let me just see if I've got any more notes. Okay, so to close off, I do feel like I'm rushing a bit, but sorry about that. To close off, I just want to remind you that although you're gonna see you're gonna see yourself in maybe one archetype in particular, as you start to delve in and explore them, you're going to see the ruler or the creator or the innocent. You're going to say, wow, that is me down to a T. You need to understand that it's not you. It isn't you. It's just a part of you. All of these archetypes are within your unconscious somewhere. Not a single one is you. It actually, another off the cuff tangent, I'm so sorry, but it reminds me of these star signs. There are also 12 star signs, very much like the archetypes. I'm sure that, there's 12 star signs. But people say, I'm a Cancerian. I'm born in July. I'm a Cancer. Every attribute to do with a Cancer. Yep, that's me. That doesn't make any sense. Because there are so many attributes of the other signs that can apply to me. And the people who say, well, you can't possibly just base all of your choices, love matches, blah, 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 off of what star sign you are, doesn't make no sense, because when you read them, they're so general and can be applied to anyone. Well, there's a lot of truth in that, but there's also some truth in there being certain characteristics that are more dominant within particular types of people. But this is very similar. So you're going to see elements of yourself and relate to a particular archetype more than the others, but please don't get stuck thinking that is you and this is me and everything that's to do with this archetype is me and I'm going to base my life on it. Don't do that. You will only get stuck and give yourself a problem. What it is your job to do, though, is to be aware and conscious of when these archetypes show up in your life. And when you start to display and exhibit their characteristics, make a mental note. What's actually happening? Why have I become the jester? Who am I talking to? What is going on in this situation? Is this a defense mechanism for something that I actually don't really want to deal with? Is this an aggressive change? Have I become the rebel in this situation? What has made me do this? What am I suppressing, or what am I going against that's making me say nah? Make a note of it. And what you want to do is just analyze what happened, why it happened, who was there when it happened, in your own time, in your reflective time. And the reason you're going to do that is so you can better manage the way that these archetypes manifest themselves. Because I mentioned it earlier, you can get this possession of an archetype. This archetype just rises up when you're in trouble, this defense mechanism, and that's it, that it overtakes. The jester overtakes. And instead of you saying to somebody, nah, it's not okay that you're taking my sweets, or you're coming back late from the lunch break and I'm getting less of mine, haha, it's okay, yeah, nothing, it don't matter, man, it happens, innit? Inside you're thinking, rah, now I've only got 10 minutes lunch break. That's you need to start to analyze what's going on there. And maybe you need to get a bit of the rebel going on and say, hold on, no, I need 10 minutes of your lunch break. Or you need to go to the boss and say, listen, I came back late, so-and-so needs to go on their lunch break 10 minutes more. Yeah, analyze it and start to understand how you can use the other characteristics to your advantage, because they're all within you. All right, that's it for this episode. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope it's been insightful. Please leave a comment somewhere. Get at me, let me know what you're thinking. If you think it will help somebody else, please share it, like it on whatever platform you're on. If you can subscribe, if you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're loving the podcast and you want to support the podcast, keep it ad free and all of that goodness, jump onto the patreon.com/THJP and subscribe there. I would love that. I'll give you a shout out on the podcast and whatnot. Until then, I look forward to speaking to you in the next one. Peace.